Israel needs America for munitions to put into the guns and under the wings of the airplane. We need financial support for these munitions. We need the Americans to deter Iran. We need them to deter Hezbollah. We need them for support in the UN Security Council against active resolution that demand certain steps from Israel. And we need them even to protect our leadership, including Netanyahu in The Hague, in the criminal court in The Hague. So Israel practically cannot go into a regional war without the United States.
Now, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says nothing will stop the elimination of Hamas in Rafah in Gaza. To judge from his words on the assault on the city in Gaza seems inevitable. But does his combative posture cover up the tight spot which he's really in? He is unpopular at home and losing support amongst his allies in the West, but he remains beholden to the most militant members of his coalition who are demanding fighting the war to the bitter end. Well, let's talk to someone who isn't a political ally of Mr. Netanyahu, but who knows what it's like to lead Israel, to have to make difficult decisions about the war and peace. He is Ehud Barak, former Prime Minister of Israel, also former Chief of the General Staff of the IDS. Mr. Barak, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
How do you assess the current situation in the conflict with Hamas in Gaza? Is it inevitable now, as the Prime Minister says, that there will be a ground assault on Rafah?
No, Israel has a compelling imperative to make sure that when this war ends, Hamas does not reign over the Gaza Strip and cannot threaten Israel. But, the October 7th was the worst event in our history. And at the same time, the war, since there is quite problematic, disturbing in a way, soldiers at the front line fighting courageously, risking, sacrificing their lives, while the political echelon led by Netanyahu cannot make any simple, extremely necessary strategic decision about where are we heading. There is an old Roman saying, if you don't know which port you want to reach, no wind will take you there. We're exactly in this situation, and absent these strategic necessities, and Netanyahu is playing with slogans, kind of absolute victory, just behind the corner. Gaza should be, Gaza probably has to be treated, but it will take about a month just to make sure that there are now too many out of the million refugees there right now came from Gaza, and another 3 months or probably half a year to complete the operation. By that time, the hostages won't be alive. We don't want them in coffins. So this is the time to do it, to make a deal, even if the price is a ceasefire that might take 6 weeks or 3 months, I don't know. A rational decision has to be made. Netanyahu lost the capacity to make them because he lost the trust of the people. When 80% of people seem the main responsible to the worst event in our history, when 71% want him to resign immediately or in few weeks, and when 60+% want early election, that means that he acts with no public or popular legitimacy, and that's a problem in our system. It's not easy to cause him to leave. I envy the British tradition in the UK. If something like this would have happened on the October 8th, he would have resigned, and if he would not, few days later, the leading members of his own cabinet would invite him to the proper club, and at the end of the lunch, he would announce that he decided to resign.
Now, you say that, but it has to be said that as far as we can gather from the latest talks, it was actually Hamas who withdrew from the idea of having a temporary ceasefire and exchange of hostages. Partly, it's believed because, sadly, many of those hostages may no longer be alive and able to be exchanged.
Look, we formally know about 134, out of which about 100 should have been alive. Everyone understands that probably almost half of them are not alive anymore. But in order not to have the other half coming back in kind of in coffins, we need to make decisions. Now, until now, of course, the Hamas is a tough partner, so to speak, for negotiation. For unexplainable reasons, Netanyahu doesn't give them for 2 months now the kind of mandate that they have just described.
If we have a situation where there is this temporary ceasefire, you see it as very much only temporary, and then, as you were saying to me at the beginning, you feel that Israel has no alternative but to continue the operation in Rafah to eliminate Hamas. Is that right?
Look, the idea that Rafah is something like the Holy Grail or the kind of keystone of all structure Hamas will evaporate if we take over Rafah is a little bit exaggerated. There is more than one way to deal with Rafah. The Americans are proposing a better idea. Just think of the possibility that we join hands with the Americans, with the countries, moderate autocrats, Sunnite autocrats in the area, Egypt, Jordan, Emirates, Saudis want to join this club, and create a regional deployment led by the United States, axis of moderate to face the axis of rogue state, Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the Houthis, the militias in Iraq and Syria. This is what is really needed. And Israel is strongly dependent upon them. We are sovereign, we are the stronger player around, but we are still not omnipotent. Israel needs America for munitions to put into the guns and under the wings of the airplane. We need a financial support for these munitions. We need the Americans to deter Iran. We need them to deter Hezbollah. We need them for support in the UN Security Council against active resolution that demands certain steps from Israel. And we need them even to protect our leadership, including Netanyahu in The Hague, in the criminal court in The Hague. So Israel practically cannot go into a regional war without the United States. It's clear, it's simple. For a personal survivability reason, Netanyahu is not ready to accept this simple policy.
I just want to ask you, there are members of the government, including Mr. Netanyahu, who say the two-state solution, which has been talked about, is dead, that there is no possibility of Israel permitting the establishment of a independent Palestinian state. What's your view?
Look, Netanyahu just recently pretended he's not just saving Israel from having Palestinian demilitarized state side by side with us, he's saving Europe from the new Islamo-Nazi threat. But he is the one who financed this Islamo-Nazi threat for 5 years. He asked Qatar, or agreed that Qatar will finance them with $1.5 billion. Half of them went into this huge tunnel structures underneath the Gaza Strip. It's totally inconsistent. Netanyahu himself made a Bar-Ilan speech where he promised to go for it. Just a few years ago, he went with Trump to consider and check these ideas of Trump about the establishing Palestinian state side by side with Israel. It's not practical right now. We first have to make sure that Hamas cannot raise its head in Gaza. But having said that, it's not something practical. It's part of the price for the deal that I've just described. We will get normalization with Saudi Arabia, but we cannot do it while ignoring the big elephant, Palestinian elephant in the room. So Israel, in the long term, will have to think, once the blood is not boiling and there are not just thoughts of revenge, but also rational thinking about the possibilities of Middle East, Israel will have to consider the idea that, because if there is no other alternative, no Norwegian or Swedish people will not come to control the Gaza Strip. It should be Palestinian. the only legitimate Palestinian is revitalized Palestinian Authority. So what we have to need is to go with the United States and with the Arab moderates and create a multinational Arab force that will take temporarily for half a year or a year the control of the Gaza Strip. During this year, they will bring back a revitalized Palestinian Authority. We have nothing to do otherwise, and there is no other alternative. And in the future, we will have to enter into political negotiation with the vision of two-state solution. A strong, capable Israel sitting behind internationally recognized border and side by side with a kind of a demilitarized Palestinian kind of revived authority. That's the only possibility, and we have to start to think about it seriously.
Ehud Barak, thank you very much indeed for joining us, former Prime Minister of Israel there.